Welcome to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss science fiction, fantasy, cooking, the outdoors, and more. This is my second video on the topic of unwatchable movies. If you haven't seen my first video on this topic, I highly recommend it because there are 10 truly unwatchable movies listed within it. You should see it linked above. I call the films in this list unwatchable because they are generally so bad that it's only possible to watch them once, or only partially in some cases. Then you never want to watch them again. There are various factors that can make a film unwatchable. Some of the factors that I have personally experienced that can make a film unwatchable include the following: excessive retconning, excessive boredom, that's quite common, characters that no one can identify with, that's also common, bad writing, bad editing, excessively annoying children, and unnecessarily dark and or depressing stories and characters. Unwatchable films will typically have more than one of these factors, but one may be enough to make it too unpleasant to watch again. So let's get started with these 10 additional unwatchable films. In no particular order, the first unwatchable film that I'll list is the 1997 movie Batman and Robin. I saw this god-awful movie in a theater with friends, and it has multiple problems. First of all, casting Arnold Schwarzenegger as Dr. Freeze was a terrible idea. The characters of Poison Ivy and the Frankenstein-like Bane were also poorly acted. Walls covered in an eye-scorching cacophony of psychedelic finger paints did little to divert attention away from the film's awful acting and tremendously boring plot. If anything, they just made the film that much harder to watch and even more of a joke. After seeing this film once, I never needed or wanted to watch it again. And I'm obviously not alone, because it stopped any more comic book-esque Batman films from ever being produced again. The second unwatchable film that I'll list here is the 1983 Smokey and the Bandit Part 3. The original Smokey and the Bandit from 1977 is one of my favorite comedic films. While the 1980 sequel was not very good, you'd think that the studio, Universal Pictures, would have realized that producing a Part 3 without Burt Reynolds and Sally Field wouldn't be a wise investment. But no, they decided to do it anyway. And not only is the plot abysmal, they decided to have Burt Reynolds' sidekick in the first two films, the character Cletus, as played by Jerry Reed, to become the bandit himself. Bad idea. Fortunately, there wasn't a Part 4. The third film that I will list here is the 1964 garbage film Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. If you're not familiar with this thing, it's difficult to describe just how horrible the film truly is. The costumes are bad, the plot is stupid, and the acting is reprehensible. I don't remember exactly when I saw this movie, but it left such a bad impression on me that I wanted to include it in this list of unwatchable films. If you decide to watch this awful film for yourself, you do so at your own risk. I really don't advise it. One film that I'm fairly certain is probably on everybody's unwatchable list is the 2000 sci-fi dumpster fire of a film entitled Battlefield Earth, which was based on a novel written by Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard and was co-produced by well-known actor and Scientologist John Travolta. Shock. This film is essentially what happens when you throw overused technobabble, bad acting, bad writing, poor lighting, unlikable characters, and a boring plot into a blender, and it turns into sludge. I wasn't able to watch this film in its entirety. Not surprising. It's so bad, if you haven't seen it, be happy that you haven't. Moving on, the original 1980 film Caddyshack is a fantastic comedy, but the sequel that came out in 1988, Caddyshack 2, was an epic disaster. Even though Harold Ramey was one of the writers, nothing could help this very poor cousin recapture the magic of the original movie. Bad acting, a bad story, and bad jokes only led to one thing: an unwatchable movie. If you're into dark and depressing movies, then the 2000 film Vulgar may be up your alley, but it's not something that I will ever watch again. If you haven't heard of this awful film, a loser who lives in a crummy apartment and works as a clown at children's parties decides to dress up as a female clown to attend bachelor parties. He ends up getting gang raped and spends the rest of the film seeking revenge. His mother is a piece of work too. Trust me on this. You don't want to watch this depressing and creepy movie. The only reason that I watched it was because some friends of mine rented it. The original 1978 Superman movie, starring Christopher Reeve, is a classic superhero movie. But as what happens with many film franchise sequels, the more sequels that got made, the worse they usually become. And the Superman film franchise that began in 1978 is no exception to this. But thankfully, no more were made after the truly awful 1987 Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. The story, which was written by Christopher Reeve, should never have been put on film. At least not this film, because it was so deplorably stupid. This film suffered from a badly written, saccharine plot, too many plot holes, a poorly conceived villain in the form of Nuclear Man, cheesy special effects, and horrible acting on top of everything else that made this film bad. A truly unwatchable film. When this next unwatchable film was produced in 1995, it had a massive budget of $175 million. But no amount of money could have helped this truly awful film, Waterworld, starring Kevin Costner, from sinking under its own stupidity. This Mad Max-style dystopian oceanic snooze fest spent 3 hours trying to find a plot that no one in the end wanted to see. It was essentially nothing more than an overpriced Costner ego trip that demonstrates Hollywood's willingness to spend anything on one of its golden children. If you want to be bored to death, feel free to watch Waterworld. In another quest to make money, Paramount decided to pour money into a sequel for the highly successful 1978 musical, Grease. The 1982 sequel, entitled Grease 2, not only didn't have John Travolta or Olivia Newton-John, it decided to have the male character be the foreigner struggling to find love with one of the Pink Ladies, by turning himself into a leather-clad motorcycle trick rider to woo her. The result was a series of totally forgettable songs, and one that got played repeatedly because the Pink Ladies were practicing for a school pageant. Original musical writers Jim Jacobs and Warren Casey are undoubtedly very happy that they weren't involved in this utterly horrible movie, because no one would want it on their resumes. The 10th and final unwatchable film that I'll include in this video is Foreign, the 1993 Vietnamese film, The Scent of Green Papaya. Many of you have probably not heard of this film. Cinematically, it's beautiful, and the plot isn't horrible, but the film is one of the slowest and most boring films that I have ever seen. Long gaps occurred in the dialogue, and as you think that at some point the film might just pick up, it never does. Of all the boring films I have ever sat through, The Scent of Green Papaya beats them all as a snooze fest. If you suffer from insomnia, this film just might put you to sleep. Well, that wraps things up for this newest edition of 10 Unwatchable Films. I hope that you enjoyed the video and that you'll share in the comments below what films you regard as being unwatchable, and whether you agree with any of the ones that I have listed. Thank you for watching today, and thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our YouTube channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button below, and please feel free to share a comment. If you would like to see more of our videos in the future and help support this channel, please subscribe right now by clicking on the red subscribe button below. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.